Välkomna till Aktiespararna och Aktielunchen på Hotell Birger Jarl i Stockholm. Mitt namn är Ulf Boberg och jag leder frågestunden efter bolagets presentation. Nästa bolag är ett bolag med huvudkontor i Finland. Nexstim. De har en medicinteknisk produkt för bland annat behandling av depression och smärta. Jag välkomnar CFO Mikko Karvinen och presentationen kommer bli på engelska, jag har förstått. Är det korrekt?
Ja.
Varsågod.
Okej, tack Ulf. Och välkomna alla. Mitt namn är Mikko Karvinen och jag ska presentera på engelska idag. So I come from a company called Nexstim, and Nexstim is a really interesting company that is focused now in the treatment of severe depression. So we are listed in the First North, Helsinki and Sweden, so both markets, and have been listed so from 2014, November 2014. So there's important information, as you know, as disclaimers for any listed company. So to simplify, this is the device, the medical device that Nexstim produces. So we've designed and produced this device. It's called Transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is quite a technical term. But basically what we do is we stimulate the brain with a magnetic field, and we do that non-invasively. So you see the doctor in the picture has a coil and stimulating from outside the skull to inside to the brain. And with this stimulation, you can either diagnose certain things. So you can diagnose where the motor and speech functions are in the brain. And then you can also treat certain diseases, such as depression and then also chronic pain. So that's the business we are in. And you will probably notice that I will use this transcranial magnetic stimulation, so TMS as a term, quite often in the presentation. So we have already, the technology we have is our own proprietary technology, and it is in use. So we already have about 160 systems in use in world-renowned hospitals around the world. And you can see a few names, but Karolinska, for example, here in Sweden, but then you have in the US, Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, and for example, in Germany, Charité, Berlin. So renowned hospitals that are already our customers. We have a competitive advantage, so the TMS that we use, the transcranial magnetic stimulation, is a navigated version. So we can navigate, and I'll talk about the navigation later on in the presentation. And we have a very commercially experienced management. So I'm the only management team member today in here, but our CEO and especially our US and also our US head of sales are very experienced in medical device commercialization. So if we take a look at what it looks like if you are a user of a Nexstim device, this is a user interface screen, and it tells us a bit about what we do. There's a 3D model of the patient's individual brain that gets uploaded as an MRI into the system. Now, after that, you can do highly accurate targeting of the stimulation. And with this targeting, it allows you to do precise dosing, and then you can repeat the treatment any day once you have found the correct stimulation points. I'll tell a little bit more about that in detail when we go on. Now, in medical device business, it's really important that you have the correct regulatory approvals. And in this slide, I tell you about which approvals we currently have. As I mentioned, we use the device for diagnostic, so it's navigated brain stimulation, what we do in the diagnostic, and for pre-surgical mapping of the brain. In Europe, we are CE marked, and then in the US, we are FDA approved. And this is the first business that we've been in for almost 10 years, and we have 160 systems installed around the world. Now, the new opportunity, the large opportunity for Nexstim is in the therapy business. So not only diagnosing where you have your motor and speech functions, but actually treating patients. So with the depression indication, we are CE marked in Europe, so we can sell everywhere in the European Union. And we are also FDA approved in the US since November 2017. And we have multiple systems, so we currently have a dozen systems, so 12 systems, 6 of them in the US, 5 in Europe, and 1 in Hong Kong to treat depression. And in chronic pain, we are CE marked, so we can sell it in EU, but we still need to do at least phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials for the possible US access and FDA approval. We have multiple systems installed in the EU. I'll tell you a little bit more later on about those systems. So first, to navigated brain stimulation, which was the first business use of this technology. So it enables substantial increase in progressive-free survival in brain cancer surgery, where it is mainly used. Here are some of the customers that are already using it. I mentioned they are world-renowned hospitals and institutions, and we have demonstrated in a 100-patient trial that you can get a significant clinical outcome when using Nexstim's NBS device compared to using a direct cortical stimulation, which is a method that you use invasively, so where you're in the operation room and the skull is already open. So if you do the NBS brain mapping prior to surgery, you get a 46% increase in progression-free survival for the patients. And that was a 100-patient trial. There are other trials also in this area that show similar type of effects, but this we picked up into the presentation. So as our a surgeon says in a quote, so NTMS makes surgery safer, the resection rates are higher, and in the end, the outcomes are better. So this technology is already proven and in use. So when we go into navigated brain therapy, this is a new area, a new business area for Nexstim. This is the business area where Nexstim is seeking also funding for growth. And I'll talk in the end of my presentation about the terms of a fundraise, but we are actually looking to raise funds beginning tomorrow in a rights issue that is also targeted in Sweden for Swedish investors in Swedish crowns. And I'll tell a little bit later about that. But it is a smart, focused, and drug-free treatment. So when we stimulate the brain, I will not go too much into the technicality, but it's a good thing to know that when we stimulate the brain with the Nexstim coil, we first always target the stimulation into finding where the person's motor cortex is in the brain. And we can do this with our precise navigation, and these little points and dots that you see in here are telling where you get response and where the response is so-called maximum stimulation response. So this is done first. And then you start moving the coil towards where you want to do the therapy. And in the case of depression, it's a place called dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is DLPFC, and it's located here in the frontal area of the brain. So it's quite a small area that everyone is targeting when they're doing this type of TMS treatment, and Nexstim is the only one who can target it correctly. And here we demonstrate why we differ from our competition. So the navigation that we have, the Nexstim navigation, works differently than in a line navigation, so a competitive technology. So a competitive technology would assume that there's a linear stimulation point towards the coil, and because there is refraction of the E field, so the electronic field, because of different matter like the skull and brain matter, there's a refraction, so the true point is somewhere else than directly targeted. So our competition misses in about 2 centimeters to the wrong place, and they only get in about 30% of the cases to the right place. And we can do it in 100%. And we believe that this has a big effect into the efficacy of the treatment. I will now show a brief 30-second video to show how this is used in depression treatment. It's only 30 seconds, but it will give some idea of how the system is used during a treatment. We seem to be missing the voice or the noise music, but here you can see where the coil is, the doctor is stimulating or the technician is stimulating the patient. And there's a response, so we can measure the response from an actual, from a muscle. And usually the patient is laying on the chair, and depending on the treatment length, it can be anywhere from 37 minutes to 3 minutes. And we just got FDA approval for a 3-minute treatment of depression, which is a big thing for the patient if you do only 3 minutes of treatment compared to 37 minutes sitting in that chair. Okay, let's look at depression as an illness and a sickness, and then also how it is later on as a possibility for Nexstim as in making profit out of it. So first of all, it's a large. So major depressive disorder affects about 2 to 5% of the developed countries' population, and the existing psychotherapy and the drug treatments are suboptimal. So they don't work. They work in some cases, but large amount of cases they don't work. So there's about, you can see when we go into smaller layers of the patients, that there's about 6 million patients that Nexstim is targeting. So those are patients where drug treatment hasn't worked, and they've already tried drug treatment prior to this. So TMS, for NBT therapy, there would be about a 6 million patient market in total, US and Europe. And we are targeting psychiatric clinics and hospitals, and then also so-called TMS centers. I'll talk about the TMS centers. But that's a specific clinic in the US that only does TMS treatments. So only this type of treatment that Nexstim provides. And we have launched the NBT for depression in May 2018, so rather short time period ago. Okay, let's look at some of the profit and the earnings that can be made and the revenue per treatment. So if we look at from, first of all, from the clinic side, here's an actual pay-per-use model that the US clinics are using. So the 6 mentioned clinics have all bought their system with this pay-per-use lease, where they use one of these one-time use only head trackers that are supplied only from Nexstim. So as TMS treatment already has a reimbursement in the United States, either the Medicare or the commercial insurance groups can give reimbursement for the patient for treating. Now, $250 is a Medicare reimbursement, so a rather low reimbursement for conservative reasons in this example. So if the clinic gets $250 revenue from Medicare, then the Nexstim head tracker costs them $100. You have some variable costs, so we've calculated that if you have the technician there, you need some sort of facility, and you have 3 doctors' visits during the 30 treatments, and so on, that's $52. So the clinic makes profit per treatment of about $98, so about $100 per treatment. And if they treat 50 patients per year, they make $150,000 of revenue, as does also Nexstim in this simplified example. So it's a profit-making business from the first patient. We can also have monthly fees, but this pay-per-use lease is what our customers have selected in this first phase. So highly lucrative business. We are targeting these 4 areas. We have a team of 10 persons now in the US, and they are located close to these 4 target areas. These represent already big markets, so California, Texas, Southeast states and Northeast states each have a large population, and also they have practices that use TMS. So in the US, this TMS is quite a well-established business already with some of our competitors. And we are entering this market with new navigation technology compared to the competition. And we have good market knowledge. So I won't go into too much detail, but there's a good quote from our first customer in the US, which is Island Psychiatry in Long Island, New York, which you can read later on. I won't read it now. Then we have the European markets. Of course, we are a Finnish company, so we are headquartered in Finland. We have 5 systems in the Finnish university hospitals, so all of the 5 Finnish university hospitals have a Nexstim NBT, and we are treating both depression and chronic pain. So all 5 treat depression and 3 treat chronic pain. Besides that, we have a strong distribution network in the Europe, and you can see which countries are already markets with the NBS system, and we are targeting the similar markets also with the NBT system through distributors. And then finally, we've sold the system, a first one to Hong Kong, where we have a Hong Kong-based distributor, and we are looking forward to the Chinese markets later on. But that requires, of course, more focus with a Chinese possible partner. One more area of therapy about the future, so a future indication which is very promising, and some investors that we've talked to who have invested into multiple medical companies are really excited about this chronic neuropathic pain. So we have early indications about this, but this is also a big problem patient-wide. So about 40 to 50% of all neuropathic patients are without effective pain relief. So these are patients that cannot get pain relief from drugs or other forms of treatment. And we have some quotes in here, but we have seen both in a study done by the Walton Center in UK, which is the NHS pain center, that 44% got clinical meaningful pain relief, but also in use where we have it in Helsinki, there's about the same type of in practice results that they get. So these patients which don't get pain relief out of anything else are getting pain relief from the system. And it's a really both ethically and of course business-wise a big opportunity. But we need to make some new clinical trials for this one. A little bit about the numbers, since I'm the CFO, I also like to have one number slide at least before we go to the terms of the offering. You can see that we had a net sales about 2.7 million last year, and that consisted mainly from the pre-surgical mapping, so the NBS business. It contained 700,000 euros of therapy revenue, so there was a growth in therapy revenue, and we are expecting therapy revenue to grow in 2019, so that's our future outlook for 2019. We will be still making a loss in 2019, as we did also in 2018, because we are investing into the growth, so it's still in an early commercial stage, and we need more funds also to grow the business. So we are seeking for more funds. We had 7.2 million euros in the bank at the end of 2018, and with our rights issue that actually will start tomorrow, April 2nd. By the way, I have this in Swedish at the Nexstim stand there, so there's a Swedish marketing brochure that everyone can have, which has the same terms in Swedish and a bit about the business also in Swedish. But we are seeking to get about 5.2 million euros or about 55 million Swedish crowns in this rights issue. And the subscription price will be 1.2 Swedish crowns. And the offer period, as I mentioned, our subscription period started today, and it will end on the 24th of April in Sweden and on the 26th of April in Finland. And we will announce the result on 2nd May. You can look at the use of proceeds in more detail, but the main thing is to grow our therapy business, and especially the commercialization and the commercial organization in the United States. So the US business needs more money into the growth. And finally, a little bit into the more detail. I don't know if there's a Nexstim shareholders in here, but if you happen to be a Nexstim shareholder on the 28th of March, which is the date that you got the subscription right. Then with that subscription right, which is actually traded also in both markets, so you can purchase a subscription right if you don't have one yet, you can purchase 14 new Nexstim shares. And those shares are purchased 1.2 Swedish crowns each. And it has also a nice element that we are adding warrants into the offering. So the 5.2 million euros we are gathering with the share offering, but then in later on in fall time, there is going to be a warrant that will be priced in mid-October. And with 2 shares that you purchased in this share issue, you get 1 warrant, and then you can use that warrant in late October, early November, and you will get a 25% discount from the volume weighted average price calculated in mid-October. And the minimum is 1.2 Swedish crowns. So, final thing, I know I'm a bit over my time, but as a business summary, so we have a TMS system that provides accurate personalized treatment, targeting key areas of treatment. It's commercially validated, so there's already more than 160 systems in hospitals, so it's not only some sort of system that is tested. First installations for depression have been done in multiple sites in 3 different continents, and we have a focused strategy for commercial rollout of depression systems in the US, which we seek funding for. Thank you. Tack.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikko. So let's discuss a little bit about the company and the
sure.
TMS. TMS is it's not a new technology. I think it goes back to Faraday, etc., 17th century or whatever. 1985, the first proof was that it worked, actually. So how do you protect your technology? Because there are other suppliers of TMS.
Yeah. Well, we first of all have quite a good patent portfolio, and we have 15 families of patents, so that protect this patent-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But then the core knowledge that we have is in the software, so the 3D modeling of the brain, and you saw the pictures there. That is something that we have encrypted into the software, and we haven't opened the software for anyone. Okay. So it's kind of both ways, patent-wise and encrypted software. That is our own. Okay. But it's all the software elements are done by Nexstim, and we own also that part of the technology.
Because you can't patent software. It's not that
Usually
easy.
you don't do that, because then you would have to open your algorithms for someone else, and then they may find some ways to go.
Okay, so the patent is a use patent or type of?
So some of the patents we have are use patents, and then some are for the technology and the hardware itself.
Okay. And the length of those patents?
They're now about midway. So if you have a 20-year maximum, more or less, we are slightly below 10 years. So we're still, we've been in the business for since 2000 as a company. So some of them are running at the end, but as a median, it's about slightly less than 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a good portfolio.
Yeah. In United States, when you get the approval, that's for lifetime or for the product. Yeah. In Europe, the CE mark has a renewal every 5th year.
Yeah.
So when is the time to renew the CE mark for the Nexstim's products?
Well, we actually have just renewed the CE marks quite recently. Okay. So we do quality audits quite often in Nexstim. So I think it was last year that we had the latest renewal. So I think that we are safe in that area. And in the CE marks, as we mentioned in my presentation, we have also chronic pain, which we do not have in the US yet. But it is an area where we look to get like real treatment data all the time, and also maybe do a clinical trial later on so that we could get access to the US, because it works with our European customers and the university hospitals. Otherwise, they wouldn't use it if it wouldn't work.
Okay.
So we know that it works, but we still need to clinically prove it.
Yeah, I would like to stay with the European CE mark and legislation there. There are new rules coming out in Europe. It's called MDD. That was that was the one that has been, and now it's called MDR. A lot of abbreviations here, but MDR is the new legislation from the EU on medical device, and it's very tough regulations. So since you have a CE mark, it must be for the old MDD.
It's the old one, yeah.
So how do you meet the new requirements on the MDR?
Well, we have a separate person that's very qualified for the regulatory. So we have a good person that actually worked in Orion in Finland. Orion Diagnostics had a part, and she's really excited about keeping us really up to the good level in the quality, and we follow that area quite. So we know that the MDR is going to but FDA has been also doing some audits at Nexstim. It was 2 years ago, and we've gone through some FDA audits. So we feel that our documentation systems and the quality safety is good.
Yeah, yeah. You showed us that the reimbursement that the insurance company gives the clinic or the patient, mostly the clinic, it's $250 US, roughly. You have that on
that
the
was
slide.
on Medicare example.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And you said that the clinic made a profit using your equipment and labor. They still was $95 or $96 left.
Almost 100.
What happens when Medicare discovers that the clinic is making a lot of money because the reimbursement is too high? What happens then?
Well, actually, we're not too worried about that because this type of reimbursement has been in place for a few years now already. Okay. And we think that even though it's leaving profit, but in the US, the clinics need to be profitable. It's a business. So the commercial insurance groups actually pay between $400 to $500 per treatment. So the $250 is actually quite low. And we use that as a conservative example. But some of the clinics are only treating commercially insured patients, so they get $400 to $500. So I think it's in a reasonable level to have that $250.
So why don't you increase the price then?
Well, it is a somewhat competitive market still.
Okay.
So we are now at you could say that there are some providers that are in the premium end, and we are in the premium price now because we think that we bring the navigation into the business, so they need to pay the premium. Yeah. Then there are some lower cost, you could say, competitors that are in a different level. So we see that maybe in the future we can have a bit more pressure, but at the competitive market, we think that this is a good price now that we have.
The net sales didn't improve between 17 and 18.
Not so much, but we did a shift, so I added a bit of information there. So maybe
could you elaborate on
2.7. So both years we had 2.7 million, or actually 2.6 and 2.7. So very close. 2.6 in 17, 2.7 in 18. Yeah. But the change was that we had only 200,000 of therapy revenue in 17. And in 18, we had 700,000. So we go from 200 to 700,000. We haven't exactly told what it's going to be in 19, but we think there's going to be a significant increase in 19. So there's been a shift from the old business to the new business, which is not only in the revenue number as such. Okay. But of course, it could have been, I mean, you could always say that revenue could be a bit more higher, but we're working on that. But I'm glad that the right business is growing multifold compared to the old one.
I'm looking more for trends
So we work hard on that in 19.
Yeah, you have to increase revenue or net sales, and then you have to work on the cost side to get to it.
You're right, so that's definitely
har vi någon fråga? Jag kan översätta den. Nej. Du pratar, you talk about NBD as the diagnostic.
NBS.
And the MBD.
NBT is therapy.
And I've seen an MBD, no, diagnostics? No, so it's the...
Maybe it's because we have a diagnostic and a therapeutic business.
Okay.
But the diagnostic is for the mapping the brain prior to surgery,
Yeah.
and NBT is then the therapeutic application.
So when will the phase 3 be done in US for the 510K or for the application?
Oh, you mean for the
US market?
US. Well, that's a good question. I think that if we are successful, depending on how successful we are with this funding round, we will also see how our schedule for the clinical trials for the pain. And then I think maybe it's about 2 years far from this point where we would actually start a phase 3 trial.
Okay.
And then you run that trial. So our CEO has usually estimated that maybe we are 3 to 5 years. 3 is the most optimistic, and 5 years is the kind of conservative estimate of when we would reach approval in the US. So it's still quite far, but it's a really interesting business, that chronic pain stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, tack Ulf.